So I'm going to gradually work through the list of video requests that you guys have given me. And today has been an emotionally draining, heavy-hearted kind of day. So I'm going to talk about something super lighthearted and wonderful. One of the video requests were asking how Hector and I met. And so I would love to share that story with you guys. I'm making sauce for, not for myself, for somebody else that has mayonnaise in it. Sorry, I have to do videos while I live life because my life is busy. So let me see. When I was 17 years old, I was part of a weekend retreat, like a Christian retreat. And you go and experience this retreat on your own the first time. Then you can get called back to serve. And I got called back twice to serve. The first time I was like the behind the scenes people that like leave your letters for you in your bed and leave you snacks, and it's so fun. And then they reveal this group of hidden people halfway through the weekend, and everybody loves you because you've been like leaving treats and notes and cards all weekend, and it's like little secret crew, you know, hiding around the building that everybody's staying at. And then, so that was really, really, really fun, except that we had to wake up before everybody and go to sleep after everybody to like be able to succeed with all the secrecy. And if you've been to a retreat, you already know how little you sleep. So for this particular role, it was even less sleep. But many times I would like pass out on the bed and people are like waking me up. We gotta go do this. I'm like, oh yeah. It was fun. So that was the first time. And then the second time I went back and I was one of the table leaders and I had a speech to give. And so at that retreat, the one that I was a table leader and had a speech to give, Hector was there. And I remember, it's so funny talking about this with him because he remembers noticing me. And I remember thinking, that guy looks so nice in a baseball cap. But at the same time, I was like, every time I'd look at him, he was looking at me. And I was like, stop looking at me. We're at a church thing. Listen to the pastor. You know, like I was so annoyed. And then we have this funny joke. He has all the notes written down from all the speeches given. But my speech, it's like blank. So we have this funny joke that he was just like, but of course, he probably was just daydreaming about something else. But anyway, so that was the first time I ever saw Hector, and the first time he ever saw me. And he had just become a believer and was invited to this thing by some friends that went to the church that shared the gospel with him. And so I had been a believer maybe a year or two. I had been going to church, but I was under very poor teaching. So I was a believer for sure. I was in the Word. I had this passion and love for the Lord that I had never had before, and it was genuine. I mean, even in my private life, I saw it, I felt it, and I saw growth in my life, but my discipleship was non-existent. So the growing was very slow, and the examples around me were terrible. So even though I had been a Christian for 2 years, it was still, you know, whatever. Another topic. But anyway, we met there, we saw each other there. Then he shows up at my church 2-3 weeks later, and I'm like, that's the guy from, you know, the retreat, and he has that hat. He had that hat on. And I just remember that. And then before you knew it, he was the drummer for our music at our church. And so now he's the drummer. And my husband is such a dreamer, and he is so he is interested in everything and anything. So like if you say, let's do this, he's like, yeah, let's do it. You know, it's not like, like me, I'm like, that sounds cool, but no, I'm just gonna stay sitting here and be boring. He's like, let's go. So he always wanted to play the drums, but had never played the drums. So he literally learned how to play drums in front of the church. And thankfully, our church was tiny, tiny, tiny in a garage. And then we gradually moved to a larger building that we borrowed. And it was tiny, tiny. And it grew some, but it's kind of like stayed, but the 6 years I was there, at like less than 200.
Mama,
Yeah.
it's too hot outside.
You can put some shorts on. Joel, you need to change. It's too hot. Switch to short sleeves and shorts.
Okay.
So, anyway, he like literally learned how to play the drums in front of us.
Can
And
you make me tune them out?
give me a few minutes. Go change into shorts. Be careful you don't track mud in here. So then, before you knew it, I was up there singing too. So then we were in the music thing for church. I don't know what to call it. The praise and worship band is what they called it at that church. But at my church, I don't even know what we call it. The musicians. I don't know. So I was in the praise and worship band with Hector. So I sang and he was on the drums. And we were not really friends for the first couple of years that he was there. Like, we were acquaintances, we knew each other, but I was in a horrible relationship, and so I was taken. But we had these like thoughts about each other, which was so funny. We discovered later. I always used to think he would be a great boyfriend. Like, that was my thought. I'm like, he would just be a great boyfriend. Okay, baby, that's no problem. And I would also think, I wonder what he thinks of me. I had this like desperation to know what Hector thought of me, you know? And then he said that he would look at me and say I would treat her so much better than that guy treats her. And so we talked about all this later, you know? And so then finally, when I ended that horrible relationship, we became friends, and this is when the foolishness began of our relationship. We pretty much destroyed anything that could have been beautiful. Just got so emotionally involved, and both of us were such immature believers. We had no accountability, no discipleship, no men to come into his life and say, listen, you're spending too much time with this girl, you're playing with her heart, she's probably going to fall in love with you. If you want to make a commitment and be with her, then cool, move forward. But if not, you should probably ease up on the amount of time you spend with her. Nobody came to me and said, hey, you're like spending way too much time with this guy, you're going to get emotionally involved, protect yourself. And so it's exactly what happened. I was super emotionally involved. He was too, but didn't want to commit because he was so focused on growing in his faith, which is great. I came into his life at a point where he had just started reading Christian living books and listening to John MacArthur sermons, which totally changed his faith and kind of revealed to both of us that we were in a bad church and we had to get out of there as soon as possible. But we didn't. Again, I don't want to like fly into another topic. We didn't leave because of the grip that they had on us. It was almost like a cultish feeling. Like, if you leave, they're going to slander me. So you were so scared of being slandered and gossiped about that you would stay and stay and stay. And that feeling, that is not biblical. That is not okay. That is not right. So it wasn't a cult, but there was a lot of cultish characteristics like that, for example, and a few others, which I won't go into. So we would stay and stay and stay, and then listen to John MacArthur on the radio during lunch and think, oh my goodness, we're learning so much from this 20-minute radio show, and nothing for the last 5 years, or a few things, and that's it. And I mean, I'm still unlearning what I was badly taught there. There was some things taught well, the gospel, but pretty much everything else was not. And so we were like trapped and felt like we were the only ones each other had. So we were together all the time, but that was so foolish because it was just feeding this emotional that I had. And then it became this bitterness and resentment because I wanted so much more out of the relationship than he wanted, but he didn't want to let me go because I was his best friend. And there was this compatibility that we had that was just, I mean, undeniable, you know? I knew the first week of hanging out with him that I could easily marry him, and I loved him. And I didn't love him. I just knew there's something here. I could marry this guy. Like, we are super compatible. And I made the biggest mistake by telling him that. No, he didn't. He stuck around. But I'm sure he thought I was crazy. But still, you know, we stayed friends, hung out, fought like crazy because I was like, can't we just love each other and be together? And he was like, no, I'm growing in my faith. I want to focus on God. But then I was his best friend. He didn't want to be without me, so he would still keep me in his life. And now looking back, we know how foolish that was, but that's the way it happened. And after like 2.5 years of that misery / wonderfulness, because our relationship, when it was not arguing, was the best. But when we were arguing, it was misery, because it was just heartbreak, hope deferred. My heart was sick because I wanted to be with him so much and he didn't. It was just this constant rejection. And so then I grew bitter and always asking him, let's be together. And then he grew resentful because stop asking me to be together. But at the same time, the solution the whole time was just cut off the relationship. You know, if you're not going to commit, cut off the relationship. And I finally worked up the strength and courage to do that by moving away. And when I moved away, I said, don't call me, don't contact me. I have to move on with my life, because if I don't, I'm going to end up devastated. So I moved away and we said goodbye. And I really, really had that whole movie in my head. He's gonna stop me from leaving and tell me he loves me. No, that's not what ever happens, except in the fake Hollywood shallow love movies. So that whole movie was happening in my head and didn't happen for real. Drove 20 hours to my new home and spent a year apart. And during that year, I learned more than I've ever learned about the Lord, the Bible, the church, what my walk with Christ should look like. It was the first time as a believer that I was wholeheartedly living for God, not just part of my life. And at the same time, God was doing that with Hector while he was away in California at John MacArthur's college. And while he was there, he was learning the same things. And it was just awesome to see now, looking back, God separated us, taught us both, cleaned up the mess we made. And what made me call him was his sisters called me on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is dear to my heart because it was like the coming back to Hector, like the reconnection and God just starting to fix things for us. I called him and said, I'm coming home for Christmas. Do you want to see each other one more time? Because I had heard he was leaving to California. He hadn't gone yet. He left 6 months after I left. And I thought, this is it. This is it for real. We are parting ways and it's over. And so I thought, let's just see each other one last time. And so we saw each other one last time. And at the end of our visit, I was like, so you really think there's nothing here? Like, really? And he was like, man, I know there is. I just don't know what to do. I need to get counseled by a man that knows something. So he went to Master's College. I left back to Tennessee. And he got counseled, and before his semester even started, we were engaged. And I mean, he went to get counseled, and he left the counselor's office to his dorm and called me and said, I've been an idiot, we're getting married. And I was like, okay. Yes, thank you for finally coming to your senses. You know, I was on the spot, immediately his. And we planned our wedding long distance, got married 3 months later. I got my ring like 3 months later. Then we got married like 5 months later. People thought I was crazy. I had my wedding dress. Everything was ready and I didn't have my ring yet. I'm like, trust me, you guys just don't understand. You don't understand. Don't worry, I'm okay. They thought I was crazy and I understand why. So then we reunited in Miami for spring break. We registered. He gave me my ring. We parted ways again. And after that semester, we got married in Miami in June, just a week after I turned 23. And the rest is history. And I mean, seriously, to look at our marriage, only God could have done this. And I'm so thankful that he gave us the faith to follow him and stay on the narrow road, because that's the only way. It's the only way. It's the way. So that's our story.